In 2021, Ford lost nearly $1 billion in EV sales. And last year, despite all the market hype around the Ford F-150 Lightning, Ford lost another $2.1 billion in EV sales. You'd think that's bad. It's only getting worse, because this year Ford expects to lose yet another $3 billion. Today we're looking at why Ford is bleeding out money and what this means for the future of the company. Regardless of whether you're a diehard Ford fan or not, you'll want to watch this because, believe it or not, this involves your tax dollars too. Here's the thing. Ford Motor Company is an iconic American company and car giant that's 120 years old. Last year, Ford's CEO Jim Farley restructured the company. Basically, he carved out and separated the company's EV business from its gas and diesel engine businesses. Now you can view Ford by three divisions or pillars. There's Ford Model E, which is its EV business. Then there's Ford Blue, which is a division that sells international combustion engine vehicles. And lastly, there's Ford Pro, which is its commercial vehicle division that sells both combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles. In the past, Ford used to report its profit by regions, but now the company is reporting profits separately for each of its three business divisions. The intent behind the decision was to give Ford the extra push it needs in fast-growing battery-powered EV markets. Funnily enough, before the structuring was announced, not all analysts were on board. Some on Wall Street urged Ford to actually spin off its EV business, but Farley and other high execs at Ford pushed back. They said that keeping its EV unit in-house would enable Ford to leverage the manufacturing expertise and other existing strengths from its Ford Blue and Ford Pro divisions. In fact, this is what will give the company an edge over EV startups that need to create their own manufacturing base from scratch. To me, this makes sense. Why build from scratch when you can draw from what you already have? When it comes to the Ford Model E, things aren't looking very good. Ford announced that it expects to lose a whopping $3 billion on EVs this year. Currently, North America is Ford's largest market. Right now, Ford sells 3 electric models on this continent: the F-150 Lightning pickup truck, the E-Transit plug-in cargo van, and the Mustang Mach-E SUV. The obvious question on many consumers' minds is, why is Ford expecting to lose so much money this year? And that's a good question, especially when you consider all the hype, positive press, and popularity votes that the F-150 Lightning got. But you forget one thing: growing pains. Ford as a company has been around for more than a century, but the EV business is a new beast. That's why Ford has pretty much taken on the mentality of an EV startup. Ford's CFO, John Lawler, himself said that Ford EV's division is basically a startup inside a 119-year-old company. Here's the thing about startups. Startups inherently need to build from the ground up. The first few years are usually rocky. It's common to lose money for quite some time before they start earning a profit. And that's why Ford isn't too surprised by the losses within its EV division. In fact, Ford expects it. And it's not just Ford. Most analysts agree that EV businesses are still far away from reaching the profit level that we currently see in a traditional combustion engine car market. By the end of 2026, Ford is hoping to reach an annual production rate of 2 million electric vehicles. And that's when Ford expects its Model E business to reach an 8% operating profit margin. To put that in perspective, last year Ford's operating profit was 6.6%. Overall, Ford has a 10% operating profit margin target. But not all analysts are as optimistic as Ford is. Some analysts say it's unclear what Ford's plans are to reach its 8% operating profit margin by 2026. Just look at what happened to Tesla. Tesla's operating margin was 16.8%. That might sound impressive now, but it wasn't always that way. All the way back when Tesla first started, it was bleeding money. And it did that for over a decade before it finally started reporting consistent profits. Just how much money are we talking here? Get this. Around 2015 to 2016, Tesla was losing just about $850 million a year, with operating profit margins of negative 15%. So while Tesla enjoys profit now, its early years saw heavy losses while it was investing in battery production factories and development of other key EV components. Right now, Ford is still in the early stages when it comes to the EV business. The question is, can Ford reach the same heights as Tesla, but faster? In a way, you might say that Ford and Tesla have something in common. Believe it or not, Tesla's inadvertently playing a part in Ford's future plans. When Ford's CFO John Lawler was asked during an investor conference call about whether or not Ford would be able to hit its EV profit goals, he conveyed his confidence in Ford's projection. Part of the reason is the sheer number of ex-Tesla workers who now work at Ford. Apparently, many of the folks who designed the vehicles at Tesla are now at Ford. When they jumped ship, they brought with them their know-how, and Ford is happily leveraging all that talent. Now we can compare Tesla and Ford all we like, but at least for now, there's one major difference between these two car giants. Right now, the majority of Ford EVs are being pumped out of 2 factories. On the other hand, Tesla's pumping out EVs out of 1. To clarify, Tesla has 3 gigafactories in the States, but the one in Nevada only makes battery packs and energy storage products like Tesla Powerwall. Giga New York, on the other hand, only makes power pack batteries, solar panels, and parts for supercharger stations. And that leaves us with Giga Texas and Austin, which is where the various Tesla models get assembled. Anyway, Ford's 2 key factories versus Tesla's 1 car assembly plant makes for a big difference, and here's where Ford has an upper hand. Ford has the capacity to sell more cars if it wants to reach Tesla's past and present profit. If you look at the hard facts, Tesla wasn't consistently making a profit until it was reaching over 400,000 models a year. Ford's electric division reported a profit loss of $2.1 billion. Evidently, Ford reported a 40% operating loss margin, having sold around 96,000 EVs. CFO John Lawler attributed these plant losses largely to Ford's plans to increase EV production in its new EV truck plant. Not many people know this, but the Ford Mach-E played a huge part in Ford's $2 billion loss last year. Here's why. Earlier this year, Tesla cut the price of its lower-priced models in various markets across the globe. Ford followed suit and cut the price of the Mustang Mach-E, but then Ford decided to increase the production of the Mach-E. But the problem was they ran into several unexpected production problems. So ramping up EV production became a lot more expensive than Ford initially had anticipated. For example, Ford didn't know that the wiring harness of the Mach-E was almost a mile longer than it needed to be. Ford also didn't know it was 70 pounds heavier than anticipated, which resulted in each battery costing $300 above the expected cost. If that wasn't already bad enough, Ford also didn't realize that it had underinvested in braking technology to save on battery size. All these factors and other problems ultimately contributed to the $2 billion loss last year. But now let's talk about profits. Last year, Ford's Blue division, which makes the combustion engine cars, reported an operating profit of $6.8 billion. Put that in perspective, it was double its 2021 profit, which was hit hard by the global semiconductor chip shortage. The Ford Pro division, which makes the commercial vehicles, also did well last year. We're talking of a profit of $3.2 billion. During the 1980s and 1990s, Ford's tagline used to be "Quality is job one," but that tagline doesn't fly today, because nowadays at Ford, quality is problem one. Not many people know this, but Ford literally takes the crown for the most number of recalls issued so far this year. We're talking about some 46 separate safety recalls impacting 6.8 million Ford vehicles. And this year isn't even over yet. NHTSA reported they had received 26 unique complaints from owners of 2021 Ford Bronco. In essence, many owners experienced a loss of power at highway speeds. And once they lost speed and the engine failed, it was reportedly impossible for drivers to start their engines back up again. No other model years of the Bronco besides the 2021 model are included in the current investigation. Now, I want to clarify that this issue doesn't seem to affect Ford Broncos with the smaller 2.3-liter EcoBoost i4 engines. The Broncos that had issues were those with the 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6 engines. Now, this turbocharged 2.7-liter V6 isn't exclusive to just the Ford Bronco. In fact, we see the same engine in Ford's F-150 pickup too. But so far, there's been no investigation opened into the Ford's F-150's engine version. So why were these Broncos losing power? Apparently, the catastrophic engine failures are due to the valves failing. Ford identified the root cause of these failures. It all came down to the valve keepers not holding the retainers in place. Valve keepers are supposed to lock the valve spring retainer to the valve. When the valve keepers fail, it causes the valve spring to detach from the valve. And interference thereby results between the valve and the piston, which ultimately leads to the engine locking up. The vast majority of these Broncos are most probably still under the factory's 60,000-mile warranty. And so a recall would be the most logical next step if NHTSA ends up finding these engines were faulty in the first place. Recalls are nothing new for any major car maker. If you're cranking out millions of cars, it's inevitable because no one company is perfect, and Ford is no exception. But let's put it into perspective. Of recalls issued, Hyundai's recalls impact less than 1 million of their cars. Chrysler's recalls impact about 1.3 million cars. GM's impact is 1.5 million of their cars. And Tesla's recalls impacts almost 2.3 million. But then, get this, Ford's recalls impact 6.8 million cars. That's not just a jump, it's leaps and bounds. Not only are Ford recalls impacting more cars than any other brands, it's also by a multitude. And that's not including the most recent investigation of the Bronco engine failures. This is a #1 ranking no one wants to be at. Although, at a side note, if you're wondering what company has issued the most recalls in the last 22 years, well, that would be General Motors. In fact, in the last 22 years, there have been 12,000 recalls issued in the U.S., and almost all of these recalls involve cars from GM, Ford, and Chrysler. You can draw your own conclusion about these car brands. Ford recalled 330 330,800 Ford Mustangs from 2015 to 2017. The problem was due to poor wiring in the car's backup cameras. Then this past March, Ford issued two separate recalls. The first was a safety recall due to engine oil leaking. This impacted 345,000 Ford vehicles. On that very same day, Ford issued yet another recall for faulty brakes resulting from software errors. This recall impacted some 391,000 Ford vehicles. Then in May, Ford recalled 39,000 of the 2021 Ford Expedition and Lincoln Navigator SUVs due to fire risks. June saw another mass recall. This time, Ford recalled 3.3 million vehicles that could roll away because of damaged or missing part that prevents the car from shifting into the intended gear. On top of that very same month, Ford recalled 25,000 regular Mustangs due to faulty shift sensors. So you can see that Ford has been racking up on recall. Anyway, Ford recognizes this isn't good enough. Ford does have the ambition to be a quality leader, but obviously they have miles to go to earn that title and reputation. Ford CEO Jim Farley has repeatedly said that reducing company spending related to recall and warranty work is vital for Ford. That's because of their long history of what some experts call self-inflicted wounds. There are multiple theories on why Ford has so many quality issues. Some say Ford's moving too fast on cutting-edge technology, while trying to save money by cutting corners in areas like development and testing. Others say that Ford's experienced engineers are purposely using cheap parts from the lowest bidding suppliers. Another possible factor is Ford's launch strategy. Ford has too many new model launches bunched up together, and it makes much more changes in its model redesigns. Releasing a completely new model comes with a whole slew of challenges and problems as it is. But when you time multiple new launches all around the same period, that's even more complicated. Contrast that to other car makers, which spread out their releases and also use more carryover parts. Let's look at Ford's recent recall for its Mustang Mach-E electric car. The problem was on certain vehicles. The DC fast charging and repeated wide open pedal events were causing high voltage battery main contactors to overheat. That's very dangerous. Overheating can lead to arcing and deformation of electrical contact surfaces. If that were to happen, the contactor would either remain open or weld itself completely shut. And if this were to happen, it would result in loss of power, which significantly increases the risk of an accident. According to NHTSA, Ford is taking action to fix this issue. The problem is set to be fixed by a software update to arise soon. At the moment, there isn't a stop sale order on the model. Car dealers are free to sell the Mach-E's, but before any of the Mach-E deliveries can take place, a software update must be performed first. The specific Mach-E's that are affected by the recall include those built between May 2020 and May 2022. That's a huge chunk of the 100,000 unit productions run so far. This means that in the U.S. alone, almost 49,000 vehicles are potentially affected. Now, Ford plans to give owners an easy option. They'll be releasing an over-the-air software update for the secondary onboard diagnostic control module and the battery energy control module. So, Mach-E owners will have the option of going to a dealer to have these updates installed rather than return their cars completely. But this isn't the only recall ever issued for the Ford Mach-E. Ford has already issued 5 recalls for the Mach-E in the past. Past recalls have been both hardware and software related, but none have affected as many vehicles as this most recent recall. Ford budgeted more than $4 billion for warranty costs. Ford also set aside the highest amount per vehicle for warranty repairs and recalls. Here are the numbers. Ford allotted $1,041 per Ford vehicle to cover warranty claims. Just compared to its competitor General Motors, who allocated only $713 per car. Clearly, they already know and expect upcoming recalls and quality issues, and that's why they pre-allocated this budget. Not only are they losing money, but more importantly, it's costing them customers. I'm talking about losing consumer trust in a Ford brand. I mean, after all, you think about their recent track record. Do you think you'd have the same confidence in the reliability of a Ford car? I'm sure by now, you'd have a small seed of doubt if you didn't already about buying a Ford in the first place. Recalls and quality issues became such an issue that Ford appointed its own quality czar. His name is Josh Halliburton. He joined the company as the new Executive Director of Quality, a new position created under Ford CEO Jim Farley. Halliburton's role is to shake things up at Ford, and his role is a critical one today. Josh Halliburton's job is to help Ford in its larger ambition to shave annual costs by $3 billion in 2026. If they can spend a few billion less each year on warranty repairs and recalls, they can reallocate those funds to more critical areas like research, development, and testing. For example, invest more in developing new models, new EV technology, battery plants, and manufacturing manufacturing facilities. Halliburton's strategy is to improve how Ford identifies problems. The plan includes things like installing video cameras to catch flaws as cars are being built. Recently, Ford installed video cameras to monitor their early builds and target any steps they can eliminate or simplify. Halliburton also plans on pressing workers to speak up early about design and production challenges. He wants to place more time and emphasis on ensuring everything is done right up front to prevent quality issues from manifesting later in the development process. Halliburton wants to use social media to find complaints flagged by customers. Ford already has an always-on team. For example, they monitor different social media platforms during the launch of the Ford's Mustang Mach-E and engage with customers regarding their complaints. But now Halliburton wants to take it up a notch. Halliburton expects to see Ford's warranty problems improve next year. But when it comes to seeing more impactful results, they could take 2 to 3 years at the very least. So whether or not Halliburton is rescuing Ford right now won't be evident for a few more years. And this is all very interesting. All eyes are on Ford right now because it's a very critical junction. We're talking about the Ford Motor Company. It's a quintessential American company that has deep roots here since 1930. We're talking about the fourth largest car company in the world with $127 billion in revenue, making more than 4 million cars a year. But now you tell me, do you own a Ford vehicle that's under recall? Please share your experience by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.